Imagine you are standing right in the center of a bustling 19th century Italian plaza.
Okay, picture that.
Yeah, so the cobblestones are slick, the air is just thick with the smell of coal smoke from all the nearby factories, and there's this massive crowd pressing in all around you.
It's chaotic.
Super chaotic. But, they aren't here for a market day or some local festival. They're actually gathered around a looming wooden scaffold, the Gallows.
A pretty grim scene to start with.
Right. It is a place of absolute chilling finality. I mean, it's a place where society publicly declares to a human being, you are beyond saving. You are entirely irredeemable.
Yeah, the end of the line.
Exactly. And yet walking up those wooden steps, standing literally shoulder to shoulder with a condemned criminal, is a man who looks just completely out of place.
He really does.
He's frail. His spine is severely deformed, which leaves him stooped over and barely 5 feet tall. But when he speaks, his voice completely commands the square. It echoes with this authority and a deeply surprising affection.
And, he doesn't just offer a quick prayer and step away either.
He doesn't.
No, he stays right there on the platform. He actually physically embraces these hardened, often violent criminals at the exact moment the trapdoor falls.
Wow.
Yeah, he ensures the very last thing they experience in this world is human compassion.
That is just an incredible, really haunting image to kick off today's deep dive. So we are unpacking a fascinating stack of historical archives, biographies, and theological writings to really understand this exact figure, St. Joseph Cafasso.
Yeah, Cafasso is such a compelling guy.
He really is. Born in 1811 to a peasant family in Castelnuovo d'Asti, he dealt with extreme physical limitations literally from birth. But somehow, this frail man with a twisted spine became known across Italy as the priest of the gallows.
And he ended up fundamentally shaping the modern Catholic priesthood in the process.
Right. So the big mission we're tackling today, the big question for you listening, is how someone so physically compromised managed to dismantle these rigid, deeply entrenched power structures and, change the social fabric of an entire city.
Well, we really have to start by looking at the pressure cooker he was operating in. I mean, the world of 19th century Piedmont, specifically the city of Turin, was undergoing massive disruptive change.
Yeah, the Industrial Revolution was basically tearing through northern Italy at this point.
Exactly. You had hundreds of thousands of rural peasants flooding into the city looking for factory work.
Right.
And this created immediate severe urban poverty. I'm talking desperately overcrowded housing, rampant juvenile delinquency. It was a mess.
It's just the classic recipe for social unrest. I mean, the infrastructure of the city just couldn't handle that kind of rapid population boom.
It couldn't. And you add a highly volatile political climate to that structural collapse, right?
Yeah.
The Kingdom of Sardinia was undergoing these rapid secularizing shifts.
What did that look like on the ground?
Well, they were passing anti-clerical legislation, and the state was heavily intruding into church affairs. This created a system heavily influenced by Gallicanism.
Okay, Gallicanism. Let's define that.
In simple terms, Gallicanism basically meant the state wanted to control church structures and appointments.
So they wanted to run the church like a government department.
Exactly. It effectively turned many priests into quasi-government bureaucrats or moral police officers rather than spiritual fathers.
Mm-hmm.
And the working class felt this deeply.
I mean, that makes total sense. If the state is oppressing you in the factory and then the priest acts like an agent of the state, you are naturally going to view the church as just another arm of your oppression.
Spot on.
Yeah.
But our sources mention a group that pushed back against this, historically known as the social saints.
Oh, right. Figures like John Bosco and Giuseppe Benedetto Cotolengo.
Yes, those guys. They weren't hiding out in monasteries, right? They were out dealing with the grit and grime of the city streets.
They realized you have to meet people where they are.
Right. They recognize that you literally cannot separate spiritual salvation from immediate social welfare.
So where does Cafasso fit into this?
Well, his approach to this social crisis was really unique. He realized that before you can fix the streets, you have to fix the theology driving the people who minister to the streets.
He went to the root.
Exactly. Because he was up against a massive internal crisis in the church known as Jansenism.
Jansenism, that comes up constantly in these sources. And honestly, the way it's described sounds incredibly bleak. It feels less like a religion and more like a psychological prison.
Oh, is a theology of profound despair. Basically, Jansenism viewed human nature as fundamentally irreparably corrupt.
Just totally broken from the start.
Right. It taught that salvation was highly restricted, like an arbitrary election by God for just a tiny few, and that almost any human failing was a mortal, damning offense.
So it's basically a theology of absolute anxiety. You're constantly waiting for the hammer to drop.
Yes, and it completely dictated how priests interacted with the public. Confessors trained in Jansenism acted as these severe legalistic gatekeepers,
Just judging everyone.
obsessed with weighing sins and handing out damnation.
Yeah.
They frequently withheld absolution. They even actively discouraged everyday people from receiving communion because, nobody was deemed worthy enough to approach the altar.
Okay, let's put ourselves in the shoes of a 19th century factory worker in Turin for a second. Your life is already grueling. You are impoverished, exhausted, working dangerous hours. Society basically treats you like a disposable cog in a machine.
Yeah, pretty miserable.
Right, and you go to church seeking some shred of hope or community, and the priest essentially tells you that you are inherently corrupt and almost certainly going to hell.
The result was total alienation. Jansenism was driving away the exact people who needed spiritual and community support the most.
Which is a tragedy.
It really was. Cafasso saw the church becoming completely detached from the working class, and he diagnosed it as a crisis of education. The priests were just being formed in a toxic mold.
So what did he do?
He targeted the Convito Ecclesiastico. It was a residential pastoral institute in Turin for newly ordained priests. He eventually became the rector there, and he architected a radical shift in how priests were trained.
Okay, so he decided to fix the factory that makes the priests. I love that. And the sources say he did this by synthesizing two specific theologies, the moral theology of St. Alphonsus Liguori and the spirituality of St. Francis de Sales.
Right, those two.
Let's break those down for the listener, because just dropping those names doesn't tell us much. What did Liguori bring to the table?
St. Alphonsus Liguori championed a moral theology that moved away from rigid black and white rule following. So instead of just looking at the letter of the law, Liguori taught priests to look at human weakness, the specific circumstances of a person's life, and their underlying intentions.
A lot more nuance.
Exactly. And then St. Francis de Sales brought in the idea of everyday holiness. He basically preached that you don't have to be a cloistered monk to be holy. A shoemaker or a factory worker can achieve profound spiritual depth right where they are.
Okay, let me try to unpack this. It's almost like, okay, Jansenism is basically like a doctor who only diagnoses terminal illnesses.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Right. You go into the clinic, and this doctor just lists out every single thing wrong with you, tells you exactly how sick you are, but completely refuses to write a prescription or offer any treatment.
Right, you just leave feeling totally doomed.
Exactly. But Cafasso, by bringing in Liguori into Sales, he's the doctor who says, yes, the disease of human failing is real, but I have medicine. And the medicine is infinite, accessible mercy.
That is a perfect way to put it. Cafasso understood that without the application of mercy, the institution was nothing more than a court of condemnation.
Yeah.
And he changed the actual mechanics of how priests learned this stuff.
Absolutely.
He got rid of the abstract academic debates about obscure sins. Instead, he instituted practical pastoral pedagogy. He used real-world case studies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He would present these young priests with the messy, complicated realities of the people living in the slums and ask, okay, how do we apply mercy here?
And he also modeled this directly himself, right? Like in the confessional.
He did. He spent hours every single day in the Church of San Francesco. And he implemented a very specific rule. If wealthy or titled people came for confession, he made them wait.
Wait, really? He made the nobles wait.
Yep. He actively prioritized the manual laborers, the servant girls, the factory workers, the people who only had a few precious minutes of free time.
I mean, the message that sends is profound. It tells the marginalized, your time is valuable and you take priority in this space.
Absolutely. But, to sustain this level of output and to serve as the ultimate educator of priests, Cafasso held himself to an ironclad personal discipline.
Right.
His asceticism was intense, especially considering the chronic pain he suffered from his deformed spine.
The sources outline a daily routine that sounds physically exhausting. Like, he never drank coffee, which in 19th century Italy seems like a massive penance all on its own.
Seriously. No coffee in Italy.
Right. He only drank water. He never ate between meals. And he was up celebrating Mass every single day at 4:30 in the morning.
For Cafasso, the priesthood admitted no mediocrity. He truly believed that if you were going to be a conduit of absolute mercy to the most broken people in society, you must completely empty yourself of self-indulgence.
He had to be incredibly tough on himself.
Right. His severe personal discipline was basically the engine that powered his public compassion. He demanded everything from himself so he could demand nothing from the people he served.
And we see the incredible results of that engine in his most famous student. I mean, anyone familiar with Catholic history knows the name St. John Bosco.
Oh, that.
He founded the Salesian Order, revolutionized education for marginalized youth, and built massive networks of trade schools. And the wild thing is, he was mentored by Cafasso for 25 years.
Yeah, Cafasso met Bosco when Bosco was just a teenager and eventually became his spiritual director. And Cafasso intervened at a highly critical crossroads in Bosco's life.
What happened?
Well, following his ordination, Bosco actually received several comfortable, lucrative job offers.
Yeah.
He could have become a well-paid private tutor for a noble family in Genoa, or, he could have taken a quiet, secure job as a parish administrator.
I mean, considering Bosco grew up in extreme poverty, those offers must have been incredibly tempting. Like, you are finally being offered a warm bed, a guaranteed salary, and physical safety.
Naturally. But Cafasso stepped in and firmly directed him away from all of that comfort.
He told him no.
Yeah, he pointed Bosco toward the gritty, dangerous work of saving the exploited street boys of Turin. He told him his true vocation was out there in the slums, dealing with the gangs and the orphans.
Okay, wait. I have to push back on this a little bit, because when you are a powerful mentor and you have a young student who really reveres you, it is so easy to just create a mini version of yourself.
Oh,
So did Cafasso just mold John Bosco into a clone to, carry out his own agenda?
That's a great question, but the actual genius of Cafasso's spiritual direction was that it was entirely non-imitative. Let's just look at their personalities for a second.
Okay.
Cafasso was a quiet, reserved academic who operated within the silent walls of the convento and the quiet corners of the prisons. Bosco, on the other hand, was a highly charismatic, loud, extroverted figure.
Right. Wasn't he out doing magic tricks?
Exactly. He was out in the public squares juggling, doing magic tricks to attract crowds of boys, and building massive, noisy youth centers.
So they were basically operational opposites.
Entirely. Cafasso didn't try to make Bosco quiet or reserved. He helped Bosco discover his own unique vocation. He provided the compass, but let Bosco pick the destination.
That's amazing.
And furthermore, Cafasso quietly supplied the material and financial backing for Bosco's early youth centers. He paid the rent for the buildings, bought the supplies, all while letting Bosco take the public lead. He understood that true mentorship is about actualization, not replication.
That is basically a masterclass in leadership. But, Cafasso wasn't just an academic writing checks for other people's fieldwork.
No, not at all.
He took his theology of radical mercy directly into the most wretched corners of the city, the municipal prisons.
Yeah, and the factories were harsh, but the prisons of 19th century Turin were a waking nightmare. They were notoriously overcrowded, holding pens.
Just horrible conditions.
There was no concept of rehabilitation whatsoever. Inmates of all ages, from petty thieves to violent murderers, were herded together in freezing, dark spaces completely lacking in basic sanitation. And they were heavily infested with vermin.
And Cafasso actually chose to spend 4 to 5 hours a day inside those walls. The sources note he would frequently come home with his cassock literally crawling with lice.
Yeah, and he even had a dark sense of humor about it. He'd playfully call the lice his moving riches and living silver.
Which is pretty intense.
But he didn't stand at the iron gates, preaching down to the inmates. He went into the cells and sat in the filth with them. And he was incredibly pragmatic. He understood that you cannot preach spiritual salvation to a man who is shivering and starving.
Right, you have to address the physical first.
Exactly. So he brought practical comforts to break through their intense hostility. He brought fresh fruit, clean clothing, tobacco, and money for their destitute families on the outside.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, but also where I see a massive risk. I mean, if you have a literal captive audience and you are the guy showing up with cash and tobacco,
Yeah.
isn't there a huge danger that these inmates are just faking religious conversions? Like a sort of, sure, Father, I totally repent of all my sins, now hand over the tobacco situation.
Oh, Cafasso was highly aware of the pitfall of transactional charity. His prudence in navigating this was remarkable, actually.
Yeah.
He established a strict firewall between his material charity and his spiritual ministry.
How did he enforce that?
He never distributed material gifts during or immediately after the sacrament of confession. He made absolute sure that penitence was never a trade for goods.
Okay, so he removed the financial incentive for lying right there.
Right, and he took it a step further regarding financial aid. When inmates begged for money, claiming their families were starving, Cafasso didn't just blindly hand over cash.
He checked up on them.
Yeah, he quietly dispatched his trusted servants into the city to investigate and verify the actual living conditions of the inmate's family. If the poverty was real, he provided the aid. He was overwhelmingly compassionate, but he absolutely refused to be naive.
I love that. He respected them enough to hold them to a standard of truth. And this deep, boundary-driven respect culminated in his gallows ministry at the Rondo della Forca.
Right, the public execution roundabout we discussed at the top of the deep dive.
He personally accompanied more than 60 condemned criminals to the scaffold.
The psychological weight of this ministry is just hard to overstate. Cafasso would spend the entire final night in the cold cell with a man who knew he was going to hang at dawn.
I can't even imagine that.
He offered them the sacraments, but he also offered a radical reframing of their impending death. He taught them that even their execution could be an act of profound spiritual penance. He promised them that if their repentance was sincere, they would experience immediate entry into paradise.
He walked with them, embraced them as the trapdoor fell, and because they died reconciled, he actually gave them a title. He didn't call them monsters. He called them his hanged saints.
Beautiful, really.
He even asked these violent criminals to pray for him from heaven once they arrived.
This is the ultimate, undeniable repudiation of Jansenism. Jansenism told the world that almost no one is worthy of heaven. Cafasso stood on a blood-stained gallows and declared, "Through the absolute mercy of God, even this condemned man is worthy."
So how does a man view his own role in the universe to sustain this? I mean, dealing with vermin-infested prisons, watching dozens of men die in his arms, all while running a college.
Well, he outlined his core identity in his book, The Priest, the Man of God. For Cafasso, becoming a priest wasn't just taking on a new job title, it was an ontological shift.
Let's define that for the listener. What does an ontological shift actually mean in this context?
Well, ontology is the study of being. So an archaeological shift means a fundamental change in the very fabric of who you are. Think of it like becoming a parent. You don't just do parenting, you fundamentally become a mother or a father.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
Right. So Cafasso believed ordination changed a man into an Christus, another Christ. You are permanently configured to the person of Christ.
Which totally explains his belief that the priesthood admits no middle ground. You are either an instrument of immense renewal or you are a profound scandal to the world.
Exactly. And he also insisted there was one non-negotiable prerequisite to survive this kind of ministry: a deep filial devotion to the Virgin Mary.
Really? Why was that so crucial for him?
Well, in an era dominated by the severe hyper-masculine legalism of those Jansenist judges we talked about, Cafasso taught that a priest must share in Mary's spiritual motherhood. He explicitly warned his students that without this maternal, nurturing devotion, a priest's ministry would become entirely sterile and rigid.
That internal spiritual engine ran incredibly hot, and it clearly took a physical toll. Cafasso died in 1860 at just 49 years old.
A short life, but one with an incredibly dense impact. Pope Pius XII canonized him in 1947, officially naming him the patron saint of Italian prisons.
And the most fascinating part of his legacy is that it didn't just survive through his students, it literally continued through his bloodline.
Yes. His nephew, Giuseppe Alemanno, grew up deeply influenced by the memory of his uncle. Alemanno eventually became the rector of the Consolata Sanctuary in Turin and founded the Consolata Missionaries, taking Cafasso's brand of Piedmontese pastoral charity global.
And the incredible postscript here is that this nephew, Giuseppe Alemanno, was just canonized in 2024.
Recently, yeah.
Yeah, and this followed a recognized medical miracle in the Amazon involving a man from the Yanomami tribe named Sereno.
The details of that miracle are striking. Sereno had his skull fractured by a jaguar in the deep Amazon forest.
Wow, a jaguar.
Yeah, his brain was actually exposed. After a grueling 9-hour transport to a hospital, his prognosis was entirely fatal. But Consolata missionary sisters, the direct spiritual descendants of Cafasso's nephew, prayed for Alemanno's intercession.
And what happened?
Sereno woke from a coma days later with absolutely no neurological deficits, a recovery that was deemed scientifically inexplicable.
That's wild. From the soot-covered cobblestones of 19th century Turin to the Amazon rainforest in the 21st century, it just shows how the faithful, consistent practice of ordinary virtues can completely dismantle massive, rigid systems.
Yeah, it really does.
I mean, Cafasso didn't lead an army or run for political office. He just fiercely, stubbornly applied radical mercy to the people right in front of him.
Which brings us to a really compelling thought to close on. We live in an era that's basically obsessed with scale, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We operate under the assumption that if you want to change the world, you need a massive, highly visible platform. You need a loud microphone, millions of followers, and constant public visibility.
Right. Like if you aren't broadcasting your activism, it doesn't count.
But look at how Cafasso actually operated.
Yeah.
He actively avoided the spotlight. His most world-altering work happened in the absolute margins,
Right in the shadows.
whispering in the dark confines of a confessional, sitting quietly in a lice-infested prison cell, and standing in the shadows behind John Bosco, funding the work but letting someone else take the credit.
That's so rare today.
It is. He challenges us to ask, is the most lasting, profound change actually born from deep, invisible, one-on-one human connections? In our rush to build a platform, are we missing the extraordinary power of quiet, hidden influence?
That is definitely something for you to mull over as we wrap up today's deep dive. We'll leave you with that thought.